Hello and welcome to the Rat Nest Podcast, episode number 81 with DJ Criminal.
Hey! Dude, thank you so much for sitting down with us. It's so good to have you here with us tonight, man.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show, fellas. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, it's a trip. We don't get referred all that often. Sometimes we get referred to people that are trying to make a name for themselves. Any platform helps, whatever it is, and and then we get your name and we're like, oh, we're miles behind this guy.
Yeah, you're already 100 miles ahead of where we're at doing what you're doing, man. Doing art, doing music, doing soundscaping, like traveling the world, dude. You're living the dream as far as we're concerned.
I try to stay busy.
So just to go all the way back, I guess, I mean, where your profile says from America. So where'd you grow up, and then what led you kind of on the path that you're on?
Yeah, I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and then I went to university in Florida for sound engineering, and then I moved to Minnesota and did a couple internships there and worked for some people there. And the weather was quite unpleasant after living there for 4 years. So I wanted to move somewhere that didn't have winters, and that's kind of what led me to Southeast Asia. And I went to Thailand and Cambodia in 2007 for a couple months with my buddy, and then I moved back 2 weeks after I got back to America, and I've been in Asia and the Middle East ever since.
Dude, that's so awesome.
But yeah, it was all due to just me not liking winter. Pretty much, and wanting to hang out on beaches.
Yeah, dude.
To have that self-motivation to be like, you know what, I don't like winter, I'm gonna move to Asia. When you grew up in Pittsburgh, bro, I'm trying to wrap my head around how Matt moved from San Diego to the low desert, let alone to a whole nother continent.
Yeah, I mean, moving sucks, but I mean, if anyone has to experience that Minnesota winter for 4 years, they might find the same motivation.
For sure.
Was going to Southeast Asia your first experience with traveling outside the country, or had you done stuff when you were younger too?
I had been to the UK when I was in middle school, just with my parents. My dad was there on business. So I went over there, spent a week in London. And then I had traveled with a girlfriend at the time to a couple spots in Europe in 2004, and I guess Central America, Belize. So a little bit, but not extensive, not really what I started doing from 2007. That's when I really started doing I wouldn't say hardcore traveling, but I brought 2 crates of records in my turntables and then moved permanently with no plans of going back to the States. I don't think I'll ever return.
When you were a kid traveling and doing those, getaways for a couple weeks with family or the girlie or whatever, was it ever let's immerse ourselves in the culture, or was it kind of let's vacation? And because Belize, even for Central America, is kind of an easy one to get away with because everyone speaks English. Me and my wife went for our honeymoon there, and I was like, oh, I didn't even need to know fluent Spanish language, per se or whatever.
I mean, yeah, it was always vacation. And then I've never been the type of guy that wanted to go and stay in all-inclusive resorts or anything like that. And just being a DJ, I'm always looking for records since I started DJing when I was a young teenager. So every country I went to, I was always looking for record shops, and I still do that today in all the countries I travel to. So that really helps you learn the local language, and you get to learn about the historical music of whatever country you're in. So it kind of shows you a different element of all the countries you're going to. If you have that one thing in mind, okay, I need to find the record stores, or I need to go, I know how to say secondhand records in 6 languages now.
Yeah.
So it
The
kind of
essentials.
throws you. How would you phrase this? It like throws you into the actual city or country that you're in. If you're like, finding the thrift shops and you're talking to people and you're figuring out, all right, who was the big star musically in the 60s here and why. And then it will sometimes get into politics or government. And this is why this person was famous, or they got murdered in this country because they were, giving it to the politician's daughter and shit like that. And you really learn a lot more when you're living in places. And once you start to see that side when you're traveling, then you can kind of apply it to the next countries you're going to. And it's a completely different when you live overseas as opposed to vacationing. Like, I love going to Japan, but I hated working there.
Word.
Yeah.
So it's like a lot of my friends, they'll hit me up and ask for travel advice and stuff, and they'll like go to Sweden for like 2 days, and they'll try to fit in like 7 countries in like 2 weeks, and it's like, you're not really getting the real deal. You're just getting a stamp in your passport. Like, how much can you learn in a country if you're only there for like 2 days?
Totally.
So I've always been operating where I want to, go somewhere and stay there as long as I possibly can.
I guess I have to mention this because you just brought up Japan and visiting, and you loved it, and then working there, you didn't care for it as much. And the amount of time it takes to really dive into a different place and kind of get the real aspect of certain things is me and my wife just got back from Japan. We were there for like 10 days. And I feel like we just scratched the surface. We were in Tokyo, we were in Kyoto, we were in Osaka, and then back to Tokyo, and then we were gone. And I was like, there's so much more than what we saw. And we were so busy with what we saw that, we loved it. It was great. But now I'm just like, I want to go back because I want to see the stuff that's off the beaten path, the stuff that we didn't get to see, not just the tourist temples and some of the stuff that we went and did.
I mean, I lived in Japan for like 1.5 years, and I've been back several times. I was back there earlier this year. Yeah. I was back there earlier this year, and still, there's, the checklist never ends. Like, I've predominantly been living in Thailand since 2007, and there's still, places that I have yet to see, and I've been living over there for almost 16 years now.
Wow.
So like the checklist never ends. If you only have 10 days to go to a country, like I would happily still go to like Bhutan or North Korea for 10 days. Don't think I'd really want to spend more than 10 days in North Korea. But,
yeah, probably not.
Yeah. I've just kind of been able to find myself with like gigs and jobs that allow for like excessive amounts of travel and like freedom to jump on airplanes and go to places.
Would you say?
Yeah.
So you obviously said when you moved originally, you grabbed your turntables and your records and you were gone. So you were working on music, you were DJing already. How much of an influence would you say just being in another country immediately had on like what you were creating and how you DJ'd and what you needed to do?
Surprisingly, not too much. Like the stuff that I was playing out in Minneapolis, it was like the same stuff that I would play out in Thailand.
Really?
Yeah. I've never been like, I want to play at the top club and play all the, hits or whatever. I primarily play like funk, soul, and hip hop with a lot of turntablism. Depending on the venue, like I remember when I first moved to Thailand, it was an island called Phuket, and this is like back in the MySpace days. And my homie DJ Kensher, like this guy hit me up, and he was living on the same island, and he's like, "Oh, come DJ with me and bring all your turntables." And I show up, and it's like a wedding with like old European people. I was like, I don't think these people want to hear Jurassic 5.
Yeah. But there is probably a heavy underground hip hop scene over there, right? Because I know like the shapeshifters and visionaries and stuff, when I've talked to Tumex and Exist, they went over there to do tours. So there is an existing like fan base over there, right?
In some cases, yeah. Like the Far Side just played a festival in Thailand like a year or two ago. They've come over a couple times. Like there's definitely an underground music scene in Southeast Asia, regardless of the genre. But I mean, it's not like it's not like the early 2000s, like the backpack scene that, we saw growing up. But it's definitely there. Like most of my music friends are DJs in the country. So yeah, it exists. It's there. It's not like something you can, retire off of or anything.
Sure,
it's not
yeah.
something you can retire off of in the States either.
No, I don't think they can.
Yeah, it's healthy. It's there.
The culture exists. That's cool.
So if you're when you travel these spots and you left the U.S. and you said you've been steady, not in the U.S. for the last 16 years.
Yeah.
So what motivates you to stay outside of like home base and shit, and like keep moving around where you're at?
Like if you stay out of the United States for, I think it's 330 days a year, then you can file what's called a foreign earned income exclusion. So if you aren't making over like $107,000 a year, you don't pay federal taxes.
Okay.
Shit. Who's making $107,000? Are you guys? Because I'm not.
Let's move to Thailand.
Jesus.
So that's pretty nice, like not paying taxes, and it's safer in Asia. The people are more chill.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's just especially Thailand, it just has a really nice vibe. Everyone's happy. There's no like public shootings or any of that shit. So like the longer I stay away, the more I just like kind of give America a bit of a squirrely look, like what the fuck's going on? Like,
yeah, is it like it's like an outside perspective now, where you can kind of look at like growing up here and then looking at it now from an outside country. It's like, all right, well, things are different, governments are different. It has its pros, it has its cons, but this ain't so bad, or what?
The outside looking in perspective shifts. Older I get, and when I see my friends raising kids in America versus outside of America, like the public school system in America is pretty legit compared to what I've seen in many different countries. But I mean, yeah, there's always reflection of, because I'm like pretty active on Facebook with all my friends around the world. So getting to just see how people are cruising and where they're living, I wouldn't say it's negative or positive, but just kind of a different set of glasses that you get to wear as time goes on.
So you obviously also traveled to Saudi Arabia based on the book that you authored, Saudi Arabia Uncovered. Tell us a little bit about the book and the experience that led up to that, and how did that all come about?
So it all started with a coup that happened in Thailand, and this would have been 2012, and there was a predominantly safe military coup that happened, and one of the implementations during the coup was like no more than 7 people could gather in public, and like music venues weren't open, so all my DJing work like went out the window overnight. And I had a friend that I knew from Thailand that was working in Saudi Arabia as a contractor, and I was like almost 30 at the time, and I wanted to make some more money, and I hit up my friend, and he got me this contracting gig in Saudi Arabia, and I moved there for 3 years and did contracting for their military.
Oh shit!
And that's what led to the book. During those contracting years, I had a lot of vacation that allowed me to travel in that part of the world and like all over the place. There was one summer that I did 52 flights in 3 months.
Wow. Dang.
So it was just like out of nowhere, like 7 weeks paid vacation and like a round trip ticket anywhere I wanted to go to. So, I mean, during those years, I probably went to like 36 different countries.
Oh, wow.
And after Saudi Arabia, I moved to Afghanistan and I was working there. And I had always done writing, not as like anything I was super into. I just kind of did it in high school and wrote for some newspapers. And then I started writing for a newspaper in Pittsburgh, doing articles about like different countries and what they thought of America.
Okay.
And that started actually like paying some money. I was like, oh, I got like beer money. I can go to Bahrain on the weekend now, drink beer. This actually like makes money. And I just thought it would be a neat idea or a cool idea to like write a book one day, not for financial gain. So when I was in Afghanistan, the original book was going to be like a 10-year spread of all the crazy shit I had seen around the world. And it was just like way too long. So I thought, what subject could I write about that would likely get published? And I was like, I could write a book about all the craziness that happened in Saudi Arabia, and no one has written a book like that. So yeah, I just compiled 3 years of living there and the craziness that I witnessed into the book, and then sent it off to some publishers, and Monsoon Publishing ended up picking it up and publishing it. Yeah.
Nice. Not to give away any spoilers, but what was your wildest event that you had in Saudi Arabia that you could tell us?
I'll give you two. I'll give you one that we'll edit out, and
Okay.
one that you can keep on the show.
Yeah.
What's the time?
I think both of these are in the book, so who the fuck knows? I don't know.
Yeah, like I said, don't give away any spoilers.
Yeah, so one that we can keep on the podcast is, so in Saudi Arabia, they practice strict Sharia Islamic law, called
Right.
Sharia law. So there's no alcohol, there's no pork. You can't bring alcohol into the country. You can't bring pork into the country. And where I was living was on the East Coast, and there's a small country right off the coast called Bahrain, where you can go see movies, talk to girls, buy beer, buy bacon. And we found out about this thing called Saudi Wrap. And you could take this bridge over to Bahrain. It would take like a couple hours, big, long causeway, they called it. And this one grocery store that had pork we'd go in there and buy bacon and ham and like pork products, and we'd get Saudi Wrap. And it was like non-translucent, like white paper that you would get at the deli. It would look kind of like this.
Yeah.
And they'd wrap it, and then they would put a fake sticker on it, like a, what do you call it, barcode, saying like lamb chops or like beef.
Oh, okay.
And then we would smuggle it back into Saudi Arabia, so we could like cook bacon and shit. And it was always a bit of a dice roll because, customs opens up and they're always looking for liquor and shit. And we would just buy a bunch of groceries and put, the ham and pork products in the bag with the other groceries. And normally they wouldn't, they would just like have a little peek and send us on our way. But this one time, this fucking guy went through all the car. He was like lifting up the carpets and everything. And me and my buddy are standing behind the car because they make you get out. And he like opens the trunk and he goes through all the groceries. And then all the pork was in the back seat. And he's taken like forever. And so we kind of started sweating and we were just looking at each other. And then we just hear the guy go in the back seat and say, "What is this?" And our fucking hearts stopped.
Oh, yeah.
We're like, oh, we're going to jail in Saudi Arabia. But it was just like a Fuji green tea. And he's like, "What is this?" And I was like, "It's tea. Like, open it up. You can smell it. It's not alcohol." But for about maybe like 45 seconds, we both thought we were fucked and we're going to get caught.
Oh, hell yeah.
It ended up being okay.
one of those moments where your stomach drops into your asshole and you're just like, I don't know what's gonna happen now.
Like all this for bacon.
All
yeah,
for
we
bacon.
didn't smuggle any more pork for like 6 more months after that.
Do you know what the difference would be in like smuggling something like pork as opposed to drugs or alcohol? Is it like a lesser offense?
Yeah. I mean, pork and alcohol probably would have gotten you some jail time, maybe some public like lashing. They still do that. But I mean, drugs is immediate like death sentence.
That's no tolerance, zero tolerance
over there for that. Yeah, like we did know one guy. I did work with one guy over there who did get caught bringing weed in from Bahrain into Saudi Arabia, and because he was American, I believe he ended up just getting like expelled from the country after he was arrested and shit. But yeah, they don't fuck around when it comes to that. Same as like the Emirates, like Dubai, Abu Dhabi, like they don't fuck around when it comes to drugs at all. Like, you are definitely going to jail at the very least. I mean, if you insult someone in those countries, you go to jail.
Wow, that's wild.
So it's definitely not anything to play with. I think one of the last times I was in Dubai, they were going through my bag and I had like a type of vape that came with like, the juice bottles.
Right.
And they were like looking at the juice and I was like, it's, it's tobacco. It says it on the label. And the lady's like, I'm reading the ingredients to make sure there's no CBD in it. And I was like, well, damn, you guys are up on it, aren't you?
Wow. Okay.
Trip.
Yeah, they don't fuck around.
Yeah, bro. I'm gonna get that book and read it. Like we said, Barfly put us onto you. Shout out Barfly, appreciate you. And I started going through everything, and I saw the book, and I kind of read a little bit about what it was. And dude, stories like that are like you just told one right now. I'm sitting here like, holy shit, that's a whole different experience than I could ever even think of. Like needing to smuggle bacon in, like just so I could have breakfast. You know what I mean? Like that's some wild experience, bro. That's awesome.
I have a question that will not include that, but you've traveled all over these countries. Is there certain things that you find that like they take more seriously? That like for us, like weed is, we're from California, bro. Like, you know what I mean? That shit is just day one.
It's like a cigarette.
Since we were kids, like even when it was legal, it wasn't really illegal. But all these countries have these strict laws on seemingly like unimportant aspects of the culture. Is there something that you've run into where you're just like, why, besides the pork, besides smuggling pork, like, is there something that you're like, I can't, Japan, like you're not supposed to eat and walk. You're not supposed, you're supposed to sit down to like do stuff. But is there a cultural aspect that you've come across that you're like, why do they do this?
In Saudi Arabia, I had to sign a contract one of the years saying that I wouldn't practice witchcraft. That was pretty fucking weird.
That's pretty weird.
They're pretty, I mean, so many countries in Asia have just ridiculous superstitions. Like everyone, not everyone, but like 99% of Thailand, they all believe in ghosts. Like if you want to fuck with any, especially Thai girls, you can just like look up and pretend you see a ghost and say the Thai word for ghost, which is pee, and they'll instantly like believe you and like get scared and shit. And they're like, don't talk about ghosts. So there's a lot of pretty funny superstitions. So yeah, I guess in Islam, witchcraft is, they think the world's flat. They think people practice witchcraft, and like people would get arrested for bringing in magic bones and shit in Saudi Arabia. And my one friend who was American, but also a Muslim, was like, you don't believe in that shit? And I was like, no, witchcraft's not real. Like, come on,
guys.
As we all know, witchcraft isn't real until it is, and then we're all fucked.
Until someone makes a doll out of you and just pokes you.
Until you're in Haiti, and then that shit's real.
Behind the mountains.
Dude,
well, I would love for this to be Anthony Bourdain and talk about travel the entire time. We did have you on because you're an amazing, accomplished DJ, and soundscape creator. Like, dude, you do so much with music. I want to dive into that. We'd be behooved if we didn't.
Cool, right on. Thank you for the kind words.
Absolutely. First of all, I want to bring up this. I think it's a more recent project that you did with the videographer that was just doing the landscapes, and you were able to go in and create a soundtrack for it. That, dude, it sucked you into the imagery so much. Like, what was that process like? Because that's completely different than getting in front of a crowd and spinning turntables. You had to really dive into that.
Yeah, I guess the guy who made the video, he's a really amazing photographer named Jesse Rockwell. He and I have been friends. He lives in Thailand as well. We've been friends. We met on like a hip hop website, like a hip hop forum years ago, like in 2008. That's when we first met in Bangkok, and it was for a artist by the name of Sage Francis had a forum. And we found out we were both in Thailand, and we just became really good friends since then. And we both love art and hip hop. And he's an amazing graffiti writer. He doesn't write anymore, but he's a professional photographer and videographer. So I asked him to shoot video in Nepal for one of my music videos, the song "The Barfai," and I did together. And then, in return, he's like, "Yeah, just give me some soundscapes for some of my videos." And my one buddy that has a bonsai garden in Japan, I make some music for his, I don't know, like bonsai videos, I guess they're called.
Okay.
So I had made, and I would just find some like Japanese sounding, Asian sounding samples and put some breaks behind it, nothing complex. And then my buddy Jesse showed me this video of him traveling over Tibet, and we just kind of wrote out what he heard in his head and what he wanted to happen, like
the swells and the falls,
crescendos, speed, like loudness, what sort of instruments. And we just like drew out a map. And I was in Afghanistan when I made it, and I just made it on my MPC and turntables, and so like visually drawing out not like the sound waves, but just where what sort of sound he wanted in which parts of the video. And we just kind of walked each other through it. And then I made a couple rough drafts and sent it to him, and he was like, yeah, this works.
Dude, that's awesome. It turned out perfectly, man. Like I clicked on it as I was going through stuff and found myself kind of stuck on it, if I'm being honest.
Cool, yeah. I'll definitely pass along the kind words to Jesse. He'll appreciate it.
Hell yeah.
I had a question too, man, because I don't, this is our first time talking in a meeting or whatever. I don't know your background as much as I should. I don't know how old you are. I just know that when I listen to Smuggler's Candle, I'm pumped on it, and it reminds me of stuff that I listened to when I was a kid, like in the late 90s, early 2000s, like in the same vein. And forgive me if this isn't correct, but you tell me, like, like RJD2 or J Rock, or like those kind of DJs that would sample soul but also have some really wet, like dark drums and stuff in it, but it's all hip hop based. It's not electronic music like EDM as is the fashion now. But like, when did you get into DJing, and what progressed your DJ development, I guess I should ask?
It's funny you mentioned RJD2. I started DJing like house and techno music when I was, like, I guess a freshman or sophomore in high school, so around like 15. And then by the end of high school, I heavily gravitated towards hip hop, and just watching some of the electronic DJs. My friends and I would throw raves. Most of them were older than me, like just getting to see a lot of international DJs and just watching people scratch. This was way before YouTube was out, so you had to have someone like show you how to do this shit.
Right. Yeah.
So I remember, just learning how to just scratch, what I guess we would call the baby scratch, but just really fast at like 140 BPMs. And the more hip hop DJs I got to see, like RJD2 when I was in high school, the more I just really wanted to focus on turntablism. And that's kind of what led me to, I guess, my style and what I like to do when I'm behind the deck. But it started off, techno and house. And then within like 2 years, this shit's boring. And it was all like turntablism. And then when I was in Minnesota, I was interning for a record label there. And there was a DJ on their label called Mr. Dibbs. And he really like broadened the capabilities of what you could do behind the turntables, like things I never would have even thought. Like, if you look at the dust cover for a turntable, he was telling me tricks you could do where if how like it will just go up like that.
Mm-hmm.
If you take it out and turn it around and just put the needle on the inside of the record, you can like knock that cover and it'll create a kick sound. You could take like a pen or even a vape, and as long as the needle's on the record, you can spike the record and it'll sound like a snare. You can actually play it like that, and just like little things like that. Remixing. There's really just so much you can do with turntables. It's so much fun. So that's it. I guess that kind of answers the question, maybe.
Yeah, I would say that answers a hell of a lot more, dude. That fucking blows me away. Like that, you could start playing the turntables live like that instead of just mixing it and scratching it and with what's on the record. You can actually add to it without having any sort of anything recorded or an instrument at all, like you said with a vape.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean you could. I don't think I never tried that live. I think maybe the craziest thing I ever did live was I brought like a, what do you call it, thing. I brought a blender on stage and I put a microphone in it, and I ran the microphone through the mixer, and there was like 6 different speed settings in the blender. So when you turned it on, you would have like, those different speeds. And you could use the crossfader like.
Oh yeah, it's like the not beginnings, because I'm sure people are experimenting with this for decades, but like sound manipulation is such a big thing now, and like you see guys with like a joystick or a Nintendo controller that they're like, all right, we're playing with these sounds in this way.
Like Thesis Sahib, we had him on here too. James from Canada, man. That's sound bending and like changing stuff up, finding a sound that is not meant to be music and turning it into a song or into music. That shit is awesome.
Yeah. There's so many rabbit holes you can go down. I mean, we could talk about this for hours. Like, so the one guy, again, Mr. Dibbs, he makes his own instruments now through circuit bending. So he gets like old toys and he'll put strings in there, and he uses like a violin bow. Yeah, you should have him on the show. He's got some really cool things to talk about when it comes to creating instruments from things that shouldn't be instruments or weren't intentionally made as instruments. And now with the advanced technology of mixers, like I'm so far behind that times. Like I can probably use maybe like 50% of what my mixer can do, because I still have this like old mentality of just records. But now that there's cue pads on most hip hop DJ mixers, like the Pioneer and the Reign, you can just cue so many different sounds, and the possibilities are endless. Like, yeah, the ideas that I write down, I probably have like, I don't know, like close to over 1,000 ideas just on my phone. I'm like, oh, I should put these 4 sounds together and shit. And back in the late 90s or early 2000s, like, that was just not a possibility. Even now, the technology, like with Serato, they have Serato stems where you can just completely separate the vocals from any song you want. You can completely separate the bass line from any song you want. So if I want the bass line from Whole Lotta Love, Led Zeppelin, and I want to just use the drums from Herbie Hancock, Headhunters, and then I just want to get the guitar from Jimi Hendrix, Voodoo Child, I can do all that. That was not a possibility 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And now it's just like so far beyond. A lifetime probably isn't going to give you enough to get all the ideas out.
Yeah, man, I've been watching like some of the stuff you've been doing, I guess just through Instagram and stuff, but experimenting with musicians and stuff and natives to the places you're in and creating music off of that. Has there been anything that you see like experimental in these places that is just like even further beyond, what people are getting done out here with like circuit bending and stuff?
No, not really. No, I haven't.
Where it's just noise, you know what I mean?
Usually, yeah, no, I mean, there was a couple interesting things in Japan that I saw that this was probably like 10 years ago. Just their sound design for like museums was pretty interesting. It wasn't anything that was like so techno-y advanced. It was like mind blowing, but it was just a lot of thought put behind it. So the sound, if you recall, when you were in Japan, I'm sure you rode trains.
Yeah.
So they emit a sound. It's just like a dung sound when the doors open and close, and the theory and acoustics that went behind it is supposed to make people not want to jump in front of the train.
Interesting.
It's supposed to have this calming effect because jumping in front of trains is a common method of suicide in Japan. It happens like daily. So they designed this sound to help calm people down with the hopes that it would make them refrain from jumping in front of trains. So that's kind of interesting.
That is very interesting because I was trying to take in, all the atmosphere, and as you know, it's like you don't talk on trains when you're there. Everyone's very quiet. Everyone's either looking at their phone or sleeping. And those noises like from stop to stop. And then also now I don't know if this is at every station or how long ago this came about, but little melodies or little jingles to let you know that doors are opening and stuff. But it wasn't only until after I came back from Japan that I started diving into, because I was like, why is this place so clean and safe? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's because they have an outrageous rate of suicide, which is fucking a whole different mind fuck.
The correlation between that's kind of fucked up.
I started looking at all this stuff, and then you realize like, it has its own set of problems. It's not, no place is perfect, but yeah, it is a low crime rate.
Very low crime rate. I remember there's one area of Tokyo, it's called Roppongi, and that's where there's like a lot of drugs, and not a lot of drugs. It's not like New York City or anything, but there's like drug use there and serious crime there, and a lot of people get their drinks spiked and shit like that. And I remember asking one of my Japanese friends, I was like, why is Roppongi so gnarly? He's like, oh, that's where all the foreigners are.
Makes sense.
It's
not
not Japanese.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, man. It was a trip. I loved, bouncing around and having no idea really what I was getting myself into. Submerging myself and my wife into this trip that we had no clue what we were doing. We had no reason to be there except for to look around and be like, this is amazing. This is beautiful. Yeah. The food's so good. You don't have to tip, whatever, it's like we are total tourists. And I think if we go back or when we go back, I really want to do my due diligence and learn a little bit more about everything and get into some of those areas that aren't on the beaten path, So, but yeah, like I'm only referring to this because you've done so much traveling in this area. And even your boy with the bonsai gardens in Japan, like I watched those videos like 6 times today because I was like, I want to do that. I love it. I love Karate Kid. I want to do bonsais like that. And it's like this thing people commit their life to it, and they're like, yeah, I make little trees.
Yeah, Treehouse Bonsai. Adam Jones, he's a bonsai master. you can go and visit his garden anytime. He'll welcome you there with open arms. Can go study with him too and learn how to do bonsai as well. He's got, I think, 3 Americans now working for him there.
Oh wow.
And I grew up with him in Pittsburgh. That's how I know him. And I went over to visit him and his wife earlier this year, and it was the first time I got to see his bonsai. It's more of a compound. It's massive. It's like acres. And it's really amazing getting to see his art. He ships Japanese soil all over the world, and I mean, that's just a whole nother rabbit hole of Japanese culture that you can go down in. Did you get to go to any onsens when you were there?
I didn't, not by choice, in the sense like it was on like the agenda, like we wanted to, and then we just Americaned out, dude. Like we were walking around all day, taking trains all day. And by 9 or 10 o'clock, we were like, let's hit the room and just pass out. Like, had nothing left in us, you know. But I was looking into doing it. And, you know, the whole idea of like not having tattoos, and you have to find which ones will allow you to have tattoos. And it just seemed a little like we'll get to it. And we never did, which was a bummer.
Yeah. I mean, you could, especially if you don't speak Japanese, like, and I don't speak good Japanese at all, but I mean, you could kill like 4 or 5 hours just trying to hunt down one that will let you go in without tattoos. And if you only got 10 days, that's a lot of time to be giving up in search of one thing. If it's not like your end all be all for your trip, you know, I wouldn't want to give 5 hours looking for something on a maybe.
Yeah.
I only had 10 days in the country.
So you've been to them. Do you have tattoos, or have you been to them?
No, I don't have any tattoos.
So you're free range. You were just hanging down.
I originally didn't, so I could go to all the onsens in Japan. And then when I started contracting in Muslim countries, that's like the first sign, you know, if you get kidnapped or something goes wrong, that's the first sign to a bad person that you're not Muslim, is if you have tattoos.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I still go and do contracts in the Middle East, so I still refrain from getting tattoos. I'm almost there. There's like a list of tattoos that I want to get in various places, but it's just a better idea to have no tattoos when you're in those places.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's some self-discipline too, because in your line of work in entertainment and music, it's like, I'm sure you meet tattoo artists all the time. They're like, dude, come through.
Yeah, you're a blank canvas.
Yeah, like I almost got one when I left Afghanistan, and then my friend talked me out of it. He's a big tattoo enthusiast. Like his entire body's covered except for like a couple spots on his face. And I was like, I haven't gotten a tattoo yet, and it would be pretty sweet if my first one was in Afghanistan. And I was like, how shady does this like tattoo parlor sound? And he's like, sounds really bad. You could get a blood infection. Like, he's like, don't do it. It's not worth it. It was just some like mom and pop shop. I think it was a Filipino guy. No, maybe it was Afghan. I can't remember, but I ended up not doing it because my friend was like, no, if he's using bad ink, we could really fuck you up.
Yeah, you don't want to risk your life for a good story.
Sorry?
No, Jim said you don't want to risk your life for a good story, but it sounds like you've risked your life multiple times and have some good stories.
Better stories, yeah, than a tattoo in Afghanistan.
Yeah, there's been some unnecessary risk over the years.
we all get there. You don't get involved in hip hop or anything without it. So we have to talk about the new album that you put out, Smuggler's Candle. We got to get into it and just kind of a little bit about just not only working with some amazing artists on there, but like what was it that really brought you to that place? Because there is an obvious feel or like a vibe that kind of works through that entire album, and it doesn't, like, it's a classic like chill hip hop vibe, but there's definitely like an edge to it, or like just like a uniquity to it, or uniqueness to it that I dig a lot, man. Like where did this one come from? The
first song that was made on that album was called It's Easy. And that's the one that
That's the one with
Barfly's
Barfly,
on.
yeah.
The video for it was shot in Nepal. So that was kind of like the start of the album. And I made that beat when I was in Saudi Arabia, and then Barfly got on it when I was in Afghanistan. So the album was a long time in the making. And it was kind of this culmination of all these places I had been. And the first couple beats, they just weren't very like happy or like dancey songs. So it kind of had this darker mood for some of the tracks on there, and just traveling in shady places, doing crazy shit abroad. And I started listening to this podcast called the Underworld Podcast. One of the hosts from there, he's on the beginning of the album talking about smuggling. And there's this massive underground criminal network all over Asia that's doing stuff that no one knows about. It barely gets any press. And so, like, I live in the Golden Triangle. Chiang Mai is right up in northern Thailand. So it's right near Burma and Laos. Mm-hmm. And there's just you can go across to this casino in Laos. It's in a special economic zone called the King's Roman Casino. And you can go eat tiger. And there's just like all this crazy shit. Massive amounts of meth is being produced in Burma and all these hidden places called machines. And there's just this huge underbelly and dark criminal network in Asia. And I was like, I should just have that be a little bit of inspiration and shed some light on that with the album. So where I live, the things I see, the things I read about. I mean, I don't like smuggle drugs or anything like that at all. But
just put an asterisk on that real quick so everyone knows.
Yeah, if you listen to that podcast, the Underworld Podcast, there's just craziness going on all over. That if you're not looking for it, you would never know it existed. Mm-hmm. So, like, one song on the album is called Green Village, and that was the name of a compound that was next to mine that got attacked from the Taliban. And so I have live samples from that attack happening.
Shit, those are live samples?
Was down the street from it. And if you listen to the song, it starts out with an alarm, and that's the alarm that went off that woke us up. And the guy that's saying, like, this is not a drill, there's an attack at Green Village, that's from a live Taliban attack. And then I used some sounds. I think it's like a guitar screech sound, but the cuts over that is mimicking what the mortar sounded like as they were attacking it. So just putting together like an idea like that, like what does it feel to be under attack in a compound in a foreign country? And it's got really gritty drums, and then using the actual samples from our security team, this guy named T, who was also from Pittsburgh, and trying to, okay, if a song was going to sound like a Taliban attack, what would it sound like? Well, trying to capture that feeling of, panic, but
right.
Yeah, pretty much just like panic and like, all right, what's happening in the next 3 minutes?
Bro, you must be the
really bad.
You must be the most zen person on the planet, because when I listen to that, I'm like, oh, this shit is chill. Like, I expect you to be like, oh yeah, I was actually just, this one's about when we were relaxing on vacation somewhere else. And you're talking about like mortar shells and shit. And dude, you must just be at one with the world, and nothing gets to you, bro, because whew, to be able to write songs about that sound the way that they do, that are just so like comfortable. I don't know, man. I would expect that to be so much more uncomfortable when you talk about mortars going off and sirens going off, and you just created it like it grabs exactly what you're talking about. There's a pensiveness to it, but there's also this like but there's also like a confidence in it, you know what I mean? And I don't think that exists during those times. You pulled something out, bro, that after hearing about where that came from, I got a lot more respect for that album, because it's badass. We were listening to it driving around today.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, listen to that song again now that you know like the backstory of it, and it'll create it'll probably feel a lot different.
Oh, I
Like
guarantee it.
I don't think when the album was released, I did a pretty big promo for it. So I was on a lot of podcasts. I don't know if I ever told the backstory for that song. So only like my close friends that were in Afghanistan would know what Green Village is. It was the name of a compound. You know, if you Google search Green Village, Afghanistan, it'll show pictures from the attack, and they decimated the entire compound. They had to close it down. Um,
Wow.
So
And you were just next door. You
Yeah.
were in the spot next door, staying there.
I was down the road from it, yeah. But I
Damn.
mean, some of the attacks were so close, they would like blow out the windows. So sometimes when you would have to like run to the safe room, you didn't know if the attack was on your compound or your neighbors. So everyone would be on their phones after you get to the safe room and being like, all you hear is just sirens, and you just feel these V-beds going off of vehicle-borne improvised explosive devices like car bombs, right? And if one happens like 2 miles away, you can still feel it in your bed. So if your building shakes, you're like, all right, are we under attack? Is it the neighbors? You get to the safe room and you're just like on your phone, like all you hear is the siren going off, like go to the safe room, shelter in place, or incoming. And then you're just trying to figure out like, all right, that one felt really close. Is it us? Is it us? Is it you? Where are you? Like, are you safe? Shit like that. But I don't think it made me any more zen.
That's wild, man.
There was only really one time that I got really shook. I think, well, maybe twice I got really shook over there. And one time I like just came back from vacation, so I was all chilled out from being home in Thailand. And then like my second night home, there was a big attack next door. And I remember running upstairs in the building I was in, and I was just like, what the fuck am I doing here? Like, I could be dead in 3 minutes. Like,
Yeah.
why don't I go back to the beach in Thailand?
So
And then my first time I flew out of the country, I was at the airport, the public airport, and this Taliban dude came up and started yelling at me. And I don't know what the fuck he was saying, but he did not want me there. And some of the airport staff, like, put me in another room so I could be away from that guy. That was a little uncomfortable.
fuck, bro, that is so wild. I'm in the mentality that you felt that on your return, like, what the fuck am I doing here? Like, I'm scared to leave Redlands, let alone the country, and go be where mortars are bombing and shit on purpose. You honestly, man, probably one of the wildest stories that we've had on the podcast yet, for sure.
Oh, definitely.
Top two.
Top one.
Yeah.
I can probably top it.
Yeah.
I'm sure, bro. This is the tame version, I'm sure.
I'm loving it.
But just to bring it back to one more sample and tame thing that's just fun loving, before we get out of here, bro. What's up with the fucking Seth Green sample?
Oh. How did you figure out that it was Seth Green?
I've watched Idle Hands and Austin Powers as a youth many times, and I just kind of was like, oh yeah, that's who that is.
Yeah.
Okay, nice, really good ear. So when I was living in Thailand, I was living on an island called Phi Phi Don, and I was working for a resort, and Seth Green came, and he was a guest at the resort. And we were out on this activity boat and snorkeled and swam with sharks and shit. And he was like, what do you do for fun here at night? I was like, well, I'm going to go to this Muay Thai bar and get my ass kicked. You and your friend are more than welcome to come. And he's like, really? And I was like, yeah. So me and my chef friend took him and his buddy out, and we partied and went to the Muay Thai bar, and I fought and got my ass kicked as usual. And we partied all night. And then, like, years later, when I was in Afghanistan, my chef buddy that went out with us, he sends me a message, and he's like, did you see Seth Green's movie? And I was like, no, what movie? He's like, dude, he made a movie about that night, and you're in it. And I was like, what? And so I hit him up on Twitter, and I was like, hey, Seth, it's Ian from Thailand. I heard you went back to Thailand. I hope you had a good trip when you went back. And he sends me a message. He's like, yeah, I went back and made a movie about that night, and Macaulay Culkin plays you. And I was like, no fucking way.
Bro.
And the movie's called Changeland. And it's a pretty good, it's a really good movie, really good visuals. It was filmed in all the actual spots that we went to, the same Muay Thai bar we went to. And Macaulay Culkin plays this, expat that runs snorkeling tours and does a Muay Thai fight, and his name's Ian. And
Bro,
that's the song name is HYLA, which stands for Hope You Like Awesome, which is his friend's nickname. So the song is like a shout out to his buddy that I still talk to, on the gram and stuff, my buddy Dan. And that's where the initials for the song. So the hook for the song is Hope You Like Awesome. Impulse is the rapper on that song. And if you listen to the song, there's all these little Easter eggs about Thailand in there. And it's about that night, about partying with Seth Green and going to the Muay Thai bar.
all right,
And,
best story. You're right.
yeah.
You're up there number one now,
All right.
for sure.
Dude,
You just hit it.
We could definitely just go on for hours because I have more questions. I'm like, what about the change of mantra? Let's we'll save it for another day.
Yeah.
But dude, thank you so much for fucking talking with us.
Seriously,
and
man, this was incredible. I'm
dropping
sorry
some
we
knowledge.
didn't get more into the music and side of it. Just we got stuck on your travels, man. But
Stories,
it's
bro.
awesome to get to know you like that, bro.
Yeah, likewise, Jim and Matt. Thank you for having me on. It's been great. great
Tell
time.
them where you could download your music, listen to everything, get your book, get all the projects that you've done. Where can people find them?
Sure. I mean, everything, djcriminal.com. It's got links to, I think it has a link to the book on there. But all my music, you can go to djcriminal.com. My link tree is on my Instagram at djcriminal. That definitely has a link to Monsoon Publishing, Saudi Arabia Undercover. You can get a copy of that. They have it at bookstores. Do they still have bookstores in America?
Yeah, we got a few.
Barnes and Noble.
Barnes and Noble still
Yeah.
exists.
they're around.
It might be it's in Barnes and Nobles, I know, but you can order it off Amazon or the publisher's website. And then, all my music, djcriminal.com. You can find all the albums. They're on all the streaming sites for free.
Awesome, man.
Oh yeah, dude.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, man. Like we said, give me 1 second. I'm gonna do a little outro and then we'll wrap it up. But stay on the line. This has been another
Cool.
episode of the Rat Nest Podcast. You can catch us every week on YouTube for the video and anywhere you stream your audio for the audio. Spotify, Google, iTunes. What else do
All
people
of
listen to
them.
podcasts on? I don't know.
All of them.
Go to ratneststickerco.com and buy stuff. That would be great. Jim?
Shout out Jay Riley.
Hey.
I'm Jim.